Hello and welcome. This video will introduce the Healthy Schools Toolkit and one of the tools that it features called Social Network Analysis. Let's get started. The Healthy Schools Toolkit is a research-informed tool designed to help education leaders build healthy school communities that support the whole child and lead to student success. The toolkit is available for free at healthyschoolstoolkit.wustl.edu. The video you're watching now, along with many other resources, including templates, stories and case examples, webinars, and other tutorial videos are also available on that website. So, if the Healthy Schools Toolkit helps you to create a healthy school, what does that even mean? What makes a healthy school? For some, there's even a more basic question. Why consider education and health together at all? One reason is that there is a close and bidirectional relationship between health and education. Not only are higher levels of education associated with good health, but children and families in good health tend to have better education-related outcomes. Many of you are intimately familiar with the ways this bidirectional relationship plays out. You see it every day. Say a child gets sick. It's nothing complex, but maybe their parents don't have access to a car, and the nearest healthcare facility is miles away from their home. The child may have to miss a day, a week, or more of class as their parent navigates a healthcare system not designed to meet their needs. The child may fall behind in class, and this single experience can then amplify across that child's entire educational experience, impacting their ability to graduate on time and find success in adulthood. This example hinges on what we call the social determinants of health. Social determinants of health are the conditions in which we live, learn, work, and play that influence our health status. A common thread among social determinants of health is their unequal distribution within and across communities. This is true for many communities, including St. Louis, where this video is being recorded. The impact of unequal distribution of health has very real consequences for life expectancy across our community. Take, for example, this map of life expectancy in the city of St. Louis in St. Louis County. A child born in the zip code of 63106 near the Jeff Vanderloo neighborhood in North St. Louis can expect to live 18 fewer years than a child born in Clayton's 63105. These differences in life expectancy can be traced back in large part to social and economic factors such as poverty and education. It's for this reason that when we talk about what makes a healthy school, it is important to talk about health equity. As this definition from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation says, health equity means that everyone has a fair and just opportunity to be as healthy as possible. This requires that we remove obstacles to health, such as poverty, discrimination, and their consequences, including powerlessness and lack of access to good jobs with fair pay, quality education and housing, safe environments, and healthcare. If this seems like a lot for schools to take on, it is, but remember, it's all tied together. Another approach to understanding what makes a school healthy is to consider an evidence-based framework or model. The image you see on the screen is called the Whole School, Whole Community, Whole Child model, or WSCC, WISC for short. The WISC model is a comprehensive framework designed to represent the ideal atmosphere for improving students' health and educational outcomes. The model was co-developed by ASCD and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 2014. Since that time, substantial evidence demonstrates that the model is effective. The best way to understand this model, though, is to break it into its components. The first component is at the center, which names the 5 tenets of a whole child approach to education, which ensures that all students are healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. By putting this in the center of the model, we are reminded that the whole child should be at the center of everything that we do as educators. The model also highlights the 10 individual health components that need to be addressed to achieve full child health and to support the physical, social, emotional, academic, and cognitive aspects of students' well-being. These components range from things that are more traditional to the school health field, such as physical education and activity, and in the nutrition environment and nutrition services, to more emerging priorities, such as employee wellness and the social and emotional climate of a school. Together, these components create a holistic, comprehensive approach to a healthy school. Wrapping around all of this is the community. As many of you know, schools and educators cannot address all of the components by themselves. Community partnerships are critical to schools having the capacity to meet students' needs. We are also reminded that not all communities have the same resources or face the same challenges. Some schools and districts may have easier access to partners who can respond to students' needs, while others don't. All of this requires us to apply an equity lens to our work to create healthy schools. And finally, we have the aspect of coordination. Although easily overlooked in this model, this ring that says coordinating policy, process, and practice is perhaps the glue that binds all other rings together. As a framework, the WISC model's purpose is to create a picture of the ideal scenario in which a healthy school can come about. However, it provides little information about how to accomplish this. This is where we see the value of the Healthy Schools Toolkit. It helps us unpack or operationalize what it means to align policy, process, and practice in context of the WISC model. We believe the how-to lies in understanding the people, systems, and messages necessary for implementing the model. As we like to say, frameworks don't implement themselves. Rather, people embedded within functional systems and armed with the right messages implement frameworks. The tutorial video that you are watching is the first of 6 that were developed to help you complete social network analysis, which is a tool described in Module 1 of the Healthy Schools Toolkit. We encourage you to also check out Module 2 and Module 3 as well, as they provide information about how to leverage your systems and messages to support implementation of a healthy school. So let's get started. What is social network analysis? Well, social network analysis, or SNA for short, allows us to understand the characteristics of a school or district's social network. It tells us how information is shared within a community, who the key players are in sharing that information, and offers suggestions for how to leverage individuals as influencers or folks who can champion school health efforts. The Healthy Schools Toolkit breaks down social network analysis process into 6 steps. The first 3 steps include learning key concepts, defining the project scope, and developing a roster or list of individuals who might be a key partner in your social network. The second 3 steps include surveying everyone on the roster that you developed, and then analyzing and interpreting the results. The Healthy Schools Toolkit also provides a case study of how social network analysis unfolded within 2 districts in the St. Louis region. This first video will really focus on the first step, learning key concepts. So we encourage you to check out all the other videos to learn about these other steps. I'll very quickly mention that the toolkit also allows you to tailor your work according to the information that you need and the resources and capacity that are available to you. At the start of the toolkit, at the start of each module in the toolkit, there is an options table that outlines 3 different paths that you can take in each module. Each option that's outlined in this table requires slightly more time and effort on your part, but as you progress through the options, you'll also be able to understand more about your social network. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of these options a bit further on today, but just keep in mind that this chart is available to you on page 11 of the Healthy Schools Toolkit. Again, you can download that toolkit at healthyschoolstoolkit.wustl.edu. One thing to note as you consider which option is best for your team, even if you have a solid team and you have an idea of who are some key influencers, social network analysis can help you assess what you might be missing or how you might be even more effective in communicating with others outside of your team. So truly, it's a helpful process no matter where you are on the process of building or engaging stakeholders. Okay, so we're going to start learning about some key concepts from social network analysis. And to start, I'd like to share a little bit more about what a network map is. Maps, like the one on the screen, are one of the results of completing a social network analysis. A map would be available to you if you choose to pursue one of the options that I showed on the previous table. These maps are really dense with information. Each dot represents an individual in a social network, and each line represents connections between individuals. The dots can also be colored and sized according to an individual's role and the number of connections that they have with others. A map like this helps you to understand some key characteristics of your school or your district's social network, including the density of your network and the number of cross-role relationships that exist. Both are key features that help predict how easy or difficult it will be for your school or district to implement a change or to share information. So let's dig into some of those characteristics that you can pull from a network map like this. So we'll start with core influencers. This is an example of a network map from social network analysis at one elementary school with whom we worked here in St. Louis. As I just shared, each dot represents a person in the network, and those dots that are not grayed out are core influencers, or those individuals who were most well-known and most trusted, most frequently in communication with the largest number of other individuals. You can see that these individuals are color-coded based on their primary role with the network. Maybe they're a parent, a staff, or a teacher. And it's important to note that network maps are not the only way that you're able to identify core influencers. You can also identify core influencers by just developing a roster, which you'll learn more about in a future video. But just keep in mind that the identification of core influencers and the visualization of core influencers is one great thing that you're able to pull from a social network map. Okay, next I'm going to talk about cross-role connections in a school or district. So cross-role connections or cross-role ties are the number of connections with others who hold a different role in the school or district. So for example, if I'm a parent, if I only communicate with parents, then I don't have a lot of cross-role ties. But if I'm a parent and I talk with teachers and administrators, I'm actually really engaged with the community partner organizations, then that would mean that I have a lot of cross-role ties. So something to look for in social network maps is clustering by the color of the individuals in those network maps. So when you see a bunch of clustering, so maybe this green is a good example, where a lot of the teachers seem to be in the same area of the network map, that indicates that there's a low number of cross-role ties in that map. this can be a problem if you're trying to create systematic changes or things that changes or sharing information that impacts individuals of different roles within a community. Something to keep in mind. And the last characteristic that I'm going to talk about is network density. So network density is the proportion of existing ties versus possible ties. A network density of 0 happens when there are no ties among individuals, and a density of 1 happens when every possible tie or relationship exists among every pair of individuals in the network. So according to the literature, there's a somewhat of a sweet spot for network density related to the diffusion of ideas and practices. The lightly blue shaded area that you see here in this chart represents that sweet spot. And the chart that you're seeing here are the density scores that were calculated for the social networks of one of the districts here in the St. Louis region. So you can see that overall, the network density was pretty low, but then when we looked at one of the elementary schools, it was much closer to that, recommended area for implementation. So you can always return to this video to remind yourself of these key concepts about social networks. But now I'm going to talk a little bit more about, now that you know a little bit more about social networks and what they are, I'm going to talk about what can be inferred from looking at a network map. So this will just be a little bit of a teaser before we start to get in and actually see and practice demonstrating how to build a network map and interpreting it. So when you look at the network map on this screen here, I'd ask you to consider, what do you notice and what do you wonder? So when I look at this network map, I notice that there is an administrator, this light blue dot to the bottom right, kind of the center right of the screen. And I'm noticing that they're not necessarily at the center of my network. And I wonder what the impact of having an administrator who, for all intents and purposes should be central to the network, what happens when they're not in the center of the network? I also noticed that there's a purple dot. This parent seems to be really tied to a bunch of community partners, but those community partners aren't really tied to anyone else or to each other. So has that ever happened for you in a school or district that you worked in, or that you had connections to? Have you ever had that kind of experience where you have a parent who's really important in a network, but maybe their child graduates from that school or they move, and then you lose that really important connector? Okay. So one more practice. How about this network map? So the first thing that jumps out to me when I look at this is that there is a parent smack dab in the center of the network. You'll see that this network map really looks very different from this network map, right? For one, there's a lot more density to it. There's a lot more individuals, but also a lot more ties, a lot of lines between those individuals. And having a parent at the center of the network, again, can be really great, but what happens when that parent leaves? I also noticed that there's a bit of a cluster of district leaders here at the top of the network. So my question for you is, how important is it to have district leadership centrally involved in the school's network? What could be the benefits or disadvantages of having that. This is some of the really fun stuff to be able to unpack when you build for yourself your own network map. So I hope this video has given you a lot to think about, and I know that the next videos will provide more hands-on guidance to help you complete an essay.